And thank you all the colleagues that have joined us today from so many countries around the world. 400 of you have registered today, and it's such an honor to have you join us today. So as Sophie was saying, it is my pleasure to share and present with you the Datasphere Governance Atlas. The 2022 instance of the Atlas is a one-stop-and-shop resource that really shines a spotlight on this expanding community working on data governance. In the past 30 years, the amount of the organizations and the complexity of this ecosystem has increased at an incredible pace. We embarked in this incredible learning journey to understand how different actors are influencing this space and data governance, and take a first step into mapping the data sphere. The Atlas showcases a total of 261 organizations from around the world. It identifies their geographic scope, their nature, their focus, their objectives, and their core outcomes. We develop both a quantitative and a qualitative analysis of the sample. The qualitative analysis was done for all the 261 organizations, while the quantitative analysis and a categorization was done of 220 organizations. So we have 220 organizations categorized, and also 41 international intergovernmental organizations mapped and highlighted in this incredible atlas. From issues of trust, such as cybersecurity and privacy, to various models of data sharing with different levels of openness and transparency, to the increasing interdisciplinarity of the system, we were able to see the complexity that has emerged and how the concept itself of data governance has expanded from a management of flows and operations to actual policies, regulations, so far and so on. And it's wonderful to see how these actors are coming together to work towards a collaborative governed data sphere and our digital society. So moving forward, I would like to share some of the trends we have observed in regard to their geographic scope, their headquarters, their type, objectives, outcomes, and sectors. In terms of types of organization, we see a majority of non-profit, non-governmental organizations working in the sector through the whole world. We also see that while the majority of organizations, almost 57%, have intent global reach in terms of their impact, the majority of them are still in the global north, which might inform us where the funding is, where the narrative hegemony is coming from, and where the skills might be concentrated. In terms of objectives, the leading objective among the sample organizations is data governance at large, followed by providing data repositories. And we're going to see how that crosses with the regions of the world. In relation to activities of these organizations, there is a large majority focus on providing research, developing knowledge in the space, but also fostering network and community. In terms of outcomes of these organizations, clearly they relate with their activities, and they are focused on things like community building, knowledge building, advocacy, so forth and so on, as you can see in some of our figures. In terms of sectors and sectoral distribution, most of the organizations do not cover a specific sector or a vertical issue in specific, meaning they focus on data governance or elements of data governance at large, developing research, furthering policy issues, or providing data governance methodologies that could potentially be applicable to any sector. That general focus is actually followed by a set of organizations focused on issues of environment and health. we see this increasing, this trend also increasing in the last few years. The result is slightly different one when we cross the types of organizations with the sector, with, for instance, a large number of nonprofits working on issues of original populations' rights. As I said before, we also try to do some gap analysis here and understand how each of these trends are distributed by region. So while in Africa you have 70% of organizations focus on data governance at large, and 30% focus on socioeconomic development and providing data in support of achieving the sustainable development goals. For those organizations focusing in North America, they're actually much more fostering the existence of data repositories to share data than some other policy issues. 30%, the second group in North America, focus on data governance, and 16% aim to generate trust through the issues of cyber security and privacy, for example. Finally, and comparing the region of Europe and Central Asia, 54%, in contrast of almost 17% in North America, are actually focused on generating trust through privacy and cybersecurity. And 27% focus on data governance at large. It's very interesting to see that and also see all the norms and regulations coming out of Europe exactly with those focuses. So these findings really provide the first step for further gap analysis and an indication of the types of needs, perhaps, and priorities of different groups. And do remember that when I talk about geographic scope, I'm not talking about headquarters, but I'm talking about impact. Another very important feature of the Atlas is actually the mapping of the activities of the 41 intergovernmental organizations that we have identified. We have 20 global organizations, for example, UN agencies, OECD, so forth, so on, and 20 global and 21 regional organizations. Several of these organizations it's very interesting to see that they are actually addressing data governance issues in a broad way and really fostering this dialogue across the world, such as the OECD and United Nations agencies such as FAO, the Agriculture Agency of the UN. From their role of setting global norms, such as novel governance frameworks, intermediaries, so forth and so on, processes such as improvement of statistical capacities of both the agency, but also its country members and interoperability issues, to structures as hosting repositories focus on their topic of their mission, right? To culture, such as advocating better knowledge and abilities on data, both from data government but also statistical issues. Still, most of the 41 organizations identified do not seem to advocate to a particular way on how data should be governed, but almost all of them do have an open data portal, which is something we saw through the years with the expansion of the open data and the transparency movements. While some efforts are cross-sectorial and focus on data governance at large, most outputs and outcomes of the international organizations, intergovernmental organizations specifically, are really focused on their primary work, right? So FAO on food and nutrition, the WHO, the World Health Organization in health, so forth and so on. And the Atlas finally does include sample publications of all the organizations profiled in the over 120 pages of work done. Finally, to help all the findings to life, the Atlas is accompanied by a dashboard, an interactive dashboard that will also be available in our website. You probably already can check that online right now. This dashboard will act as a springboard to our ongoing effort for our Datasphere Observatory. It's an interactive observatory that we hope will foster the much needed global transdisciplinary and multi-stakeholder dialogue within our intelligence program. To conclude, besides saying thank you and please inviting you to contribute to the Atlas, as I said, this is the first instance, so here is our email, info@datasphere.org. The Datasphere initiative do plan to connect communities and provide a platform for organizations to showcase their work on data governance and their role on the Datasphere. The Atlas shows us that there is a need for further cooperation across sectors, regions, scopes to tackle Datasphere within the digital society, especially if we want to tackle the most challenging problems and pressing problems of our century. Thank you for those who have shared their experience and contributed to the Atlas so far, and I hope to see you around the Datasphere.
Thank you, Carol. We will now turn to our second